came and knocked on my door and he said, I'm doing a survey, part of an opinion poll. Would you like to be part of it? Why not? I said, what's the question? He said, what should we do with people who rely on government handouts but are too lazy to work? I responded very quickly without giving it a thought, and I said, kick them out of government. Hey, in Ottawa, in Canada, they have proposed changes there now to the firearms legislation. And, you know, it's about common sense, right? And the CFOs, that stands for the Chief Firearms Officer. Each province has one, supposedly a head, but there's a cast of thousands in every province. I mean, gotta say, there's a whole bunch of people doing not very much, except complaining and making life miserable for firearm owners. Here's one in Prince Edward Island. Her name is Vivian Hayward, and she says this: Ottawa's proposed changes will possibly mean that owners of restricted or prohibited guns would be permitted to carry them around at will. I don't know where she gets this kind of stuff. I mean, she continues, people like her, to walk among us. And then she goes on to say this: I know very little about the proposed changes. I have not been consulted. But you know what? The Common Sense Firearms Licensing Act worries me. I'm very concerned about the easing of restrictions for firearm transportation. It's just basically one step away now from the U.S. style of having the gun on the hip, authorization to carry, which people in this country don't have. Firstly, everything she said is wrong. That's all misinformation. I mean, and why would anybody think that that's worthy of even printing? It's made up. Go out and talk to 3- and 4-year-olds. You get about as much common sense, right? Again, it's just dumb. And if, in fact, you ever did go that way to the U.S., like they are, that would be a good thing. But it's never been mentioned. Kind of stick with the facts, don't you know? Applications. Here's another news story, and headlines in a lot of different newspapers. Applications to carry handguns have skyrocketed in BC and Alberta and other places. Also, so what? I mean, the police and the CFOs, like that lady, they won't allow it to happen. It goes on here to say that they don't know, they being this reporter, the press, they don't know, we don't know how many of these permit requests were for concealed carry permits or for people, you know, with animal threats or people threats, and we don't know, and the RCMP won't tell us. They've refused to make any distinction. Of course they do. They don't want to know anyone to know anything about guns, because you might have a fact jump out, and that fact, of course, would mean that you should be allowed in a free country to have a gun. Keep in mind, there's hundreds and hundreds of pages in the firearm legislation that's all designed for the law-abiding citizen. None of it is designed for the criminal. Very good point, just to kind of keep in mind, as said. Anyway, it doesn't matter how many applications there are. I know guys that have had their lives threatened that are very good with guns, and they try to get a permit to carry because they say, hey, I don't want you just to come and measure my body where I died. I want to protect myself. And the police say, no, you can't. Police, CFOs, kind of all the same thing. It's wrong. Canada needs a leader to man up and say, hey, there's a fundamental issue here in life. That would be the right to protect it. Boy, oh boy. Here's a group from Windsor, Ontario in Canada. They're planning to ship water now across the border into Detroit. Thousands of residents there have had their water cut off by the city. We've decided, so says the spokesperson, Ram D. Emerson, we've decided that we got to bring water over to them, and that will embarrass the city and the state, so maybe they will stop shutting off the water for these people, because water is a right. The fact that Canadians have had to come over and help Americans, that will embarrass even the federal government and the city of Detroit and so on, and stop these shut-offs. It's a right. I think it's a right to pay your bill. It's kind of a right for a city to expect payment of that bill. This is a welfare state, do you think? Go back to Windsor. Don't meddle in somebody else's business, particularly when you don't know what the heck you're talking about. A right? Get over yourself. I tell you, you're right. You want running water? Run and get it. There's all kinds of water around. You don't have a right to have somebody else pay your bill. That's socialism/communism, and I got to tell you, it's just downright stupid. Hey, just say it. Here's a guy. He's a sheriff in Ohio. His name is Richard Jones. Recently, he sent a letter to the Mexican president, and he says, hey, attached to this letter, please find an invoice, because you got to pay it. I'm looking after a whole bunch of your citizens. They come over here, they sneak across, they're here illegally. I put them in jail, and I feed them, and I clothe them, and getting kind of tired of that. He expected a letter back from that president. Instead, he got one from his president of the U.S. and said, hey, what are you doing? You know, don't you dare do that. There's a treaty that you violated from 1790. You're supposed to feed everybody who shows up. Duh. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but that's what happened. And he's a little bit upset about that, and he started to voice his upsetness, and his life was threatened by a bunch of Mexicans from Mexico, and they said, we're coming too, but we're coming to get you, not just your food. It's a tough life. Hey, but anyway, you got to keep on keeping on, and politically right is right, and left is wrong. Y'all come back tomorrow. See ya.